We hit record on a whim and ended up with pure podcast gold. Join our impromptu discussion where we reveal secrets on how you can stand out at a writer's conference. Hello, and welcome to the Storyteller's Mission with Zena Larry, a podcast for artists and storytellers about changing the world for the better through story. Today, I have a special and somewhat unplanned episode for you. You know how sometimes the best conversations happen when you least expect them? Well, that's exactly what happened when I sat down to talk to my fellow faculty member. Now, Larry and I both just got back from teaching at the Blue Ridge Mountains Christian Writers Conference, and we sat at a table next to each other, but we never actually had a chance to connect. So we decided we'd sit down and talk on Zoom after the conference. But our chat turned into a goldmine of insights and advice for writers, particularly on how to stand out at a writers' conference and make yourself memorable to faculty members like us after the fact. Now, if you don't know who Larry is, you can read more about him. He is a pro in every sense of the word. You're going to love him as much as I do, and I hope that you enjoy this episode as much as we did. Good to see you. Yay!
Same. Yeah.
I'm
So how are things with you since the conference?
busy. Like coming back from those things is always like, oh my gosh, how come I have so much to do? It's crazy. But
I just told my wife 2 hours ago, I don't ever remember being this busy after a conference.
really? Why are
Oh
you
my
so
gosh.
busy?
I think part of it is I agreed to let people sign up for Zoom calls after.
I heard you doing that, and I because you did that, I agreed to do the same thing.
How many did you get?
I didn't get as many as you. I think I only have like 3 people.
See, I thought I would get 5 or 6.
Uh,
I got 18.
Larry.
And I know Wendy said, don't ever do that again. I'm like, I hate to not offer it, but I think I will put a cap on it in the future.
Yeah, you have to. You have to.
So, but
I don't know.
it's good stuff. I mean,
Are
the
you getting
people
any good stuff out of it?
a couple. I've requested a couple proposals, and couple people aren't ready. Like the woman I met with this morning, she really needs a writing coach, so I gave her a list of people who were coaches. And do you coach?
I do.
Okay, I'll follow up with her and put your name. So, because I gave her about 5 or 6 people. We throw people back and forth to each other all the time.
Okay. Yeah,
So
well, and you should because that's the whole thing, right? It's
yeah,
always
that's
about making sure
yeah,
that they're getting the best quality. That's the thing that I like about a lot of the people that are in my circle in these conferences is I feel like I could refer them to anybody, any one of
yep,
those people, and they're going to get a good thing.
yeah. And I always tell people, you know what? You need to find someone that you feel comfortable with. I mean, even people that paid for a mentoring session with me, they know I coach, and I'm like, okay, you need to talk to these 4 people, 5 people, work with someone that you feel you have a great connection with because you have to trust them and they have to trust you. It doesn't have to be me, and that's fine. I mean, if you want to work with Cindy, you know what? That's okay. It's not going to hurt my feelings. You need to be comfortable with your coach.
That's how I feel. And
Mhm.
that's the most important piece of it. And somebody's
Yeah.
style, they can be different. And I
Yep.
find that it's actually more collaborative than people think, the whole writing process, because, like, for example, I just finished coaching a gal, and I basically took her as far as I could take her.
Yeah.
And then I handed her off to somebody else that is
Yep.
now coaching her that I really
Yep.
trust. And so the idea is that we can't get so hung up on this and try to hold on to people ourselves. It's really about what's best for them. And
Yep.
sometimes, they've gone the distance with what we can offer them for their project.
Yeah. And, I'm sure you're like this too, but I looked around the room God, it was 2 weeks ago. It's hard to believe, isn't it? And I'm like, I've known that person for 25 years. That person and that person used to come to my home for a fiction writing group. I've known them for 20 some years. I've known that person 18. I mean, it's fun to do that kind of stuff with friends and that kind of stuff, doing conferences and getting together because sometimes that's the only time we see each other. But I just love doing this with friends.
I do too. And I'll tell you, I had an epiphany. I guess it was a number of years ago now, not that many years ago, maybe only 8 years. Because I had always, that's why, like you and I, we've never actually really sat down and talked. Because, and
Mm-mm.
part of that is because we're both busy at conferences. But the other part of it, to be honest with you, this is total transparency here, is that I realized I had a false belief. And that false belief was that I wasn't really part of the group, that I was on the
Mm,
outside because I was a filmmaker and a screenwriter. And so I didn't really fit in. And that those people, the publishing world, they don't really want to have anything to do with me. And nobody really likes me. I'm just here to teach. And I mean, I didn't realize. Right. I didn't. I mean, and I might be corrupting them because I'm in filming, I'm in Hollywood, so they all have a, predisposed view of me, which is probably accurate. No, but anyway, I realized I had this sort of perspective that made me keep my distance from other people. But I didn't know that I even had that. Does that make sense? Like it was in my subconscious. And here's how I figured out that I was doing that. One of the people, and I just absolutely love her, and I've told her this story, so I think she'd be okay with me sharing it. I It was Edie Melson. I didn't think Edie
mm,
liked me. I always got this very distant vibe from her, a very cold vibe. And I thought she hated me, in fact. I just thought she probably couldn't stand me. And very seldom at these writers' conferences do we get a chance to go and see other people's sessions. We just don't.
mhm,
But I had a break. This was at the Florida Christian Writers Conference, maybe 8 years ago. And I had a break where I could go watch somebody else's session, which I like to do if I can. So I looked
okay,
through the schedule, and the one person who was teaching something that I wanted to learn more about was Edie Melson, and she was teaching on world building. But I was a little
mm,
late because I had an appointment finish up, and it just turned out I didn't have any more appointments. So I thought, well, I'm going to go. So I got into her class a little late. She was already teaching, and here's what happened. She all of a sudden looked up, saw me come in, and she went, "Oh my gosh, you're coming to my class? Oh, I just got nervous. Okay, okay, it's okay. We're just going to keep on going." And then she
she
kept
said that
teaching.
out loud?
Yeah, she said it out loud.
Oh, wow.
And I went, "What?
Yeah,
Oh, it's not that she doesn't like me. It's that I am in a different world. And so there's some unfamiliarity. And she actually does like me, but she's nervous about me too. I mean, she intimidated me because I saw
yeah,
her as being so hugely successful and so amazing.
yep,
And so she was mutually intimidated by me, I guess. And that was a
yep,
paradigm shift. All of a sudden, I'm like, wait a minute, I've been thinking about this all wrong.
yeah. I get it. I've been there.
Yeah. So it's been
I'm the guy on faculty who rarely has any books in a bookstore because most of my writing has been ghostwriting that I don't have my name on the book, so I don't bring them.
Yeah. No, I get it. I really do. Well, and I've been on the other side of it too, where I've had people come up to me and be like, "Oh my gosh, Zena, it's so good to see you again," or something like that. And I have no clue who the person is. No
I
clue.
hate when that happens.
I
Oh
hate
my gosh. It happens at conferences. People come up and their badge, and I don't know who they are. The worst ever happened to me was I was at the Class Writers Conference in Albuquerque one year when it was held in the old downtown area. We were at a hotel that year. It was the year after we left the Ghost Ranch. this woman, I'm talking with Linda Gilden, and Linda and I are fully engaged in a conversation. This woman comes walking. Hey, Larry, what's going on? How you doing? It's good to see you. It's been kept talking, and I'm being polite and all that. Right up in the elevator, the three of us. This woman gets off. And this was before Zoom. This is before we use Zoom. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is one of my coaching clients.
Wow. So it wasn't just somebody that you'd met once before. We're talking
No,
somebody. Yeah. So that's what happened to me even at this last conference, where we were at Blue Ridge together. This gal came up to me in the line. We were in the line and somebody else had said, "Oh, do you guys know each other?" And I was just about to say, "Not really." And she jumps in and says, "Oh, yeah, we've been roommates together. We had a ball." And I'm like,
oh,
when was that? I have no recollection. I don't remember anything about that experience. I have no recollection. But I think, and this is where, I have to be a little honest with myself. I think sometimes I get so absorbed in my own world that it's all temporarily, it's going into temporary memory and not permanent memory. And that's a problem. I need to be more present and more not thinking, about other things while I'm talking to people.
well, and I don't know about you, but it's gotten to the point with me, and I'm certainly not complaining. I've done over 120 conferences now. They all blur together, particularly the last 5 years, they all blur together.
Yeah.
I just, people will send me emails and say, hey, you requested this material at such and such conference. And, we all tell them to give us a reminder. And I'll sit there and look at it and think, I don't even remember sitting across from this person.
Hmm.
And I feel horrible that I don't remember anymore.
Well, I
But I
don't even
just,
remember after that most recent conference. You know what I'm saying? Like, forget about a conference, maybe last year that I met somebody at. I mean, I'll finish one and a week later they'll be like, "Oh, I had such a great time talking to you at the conference." And I'll be like, "I don't remember what we talked about." You have to remind me. You have to walk me through because they remember, but we talk to
they,
so many people.
I still have my list from the conference. You probably can't see it. And I went through it the other day and I'm like, I don't remember that person.
It's hard. It's hard. So actually, that would be a good question. Like, what do you think, what could conferees do to make themselves more memorable? I mean, I guess you can't really try to be more memorable because that is awkward. But what would help?
In some ways, they would have to go against the norm. When I was involved with the Florida Writers Association, a general market conference in Florida, there was a guy, his name was Ben Hale. He wore a three-piece suit every day. And I asked him about it one time. I said, don't you see, I mean, it's Florida. I mean, there's people in floppies and shorts. Okay. So why do you wear three? He said, so people will remember me.
Hmm.
So, I mean,
And
you
you
could go
do.
to yeah, I do. I mean, I haven't done one of those conferences in probably 6 or 7 years, but yes, I will always remember that. Um, I don't know. I told Wendy what I want to do starting the next conference that I do in October. I'm going to keep a notebook and I'm going to make a note of everyone that I meet with.
Hmm.
Just jot a couple words. So after the fact that I will be better at remembering something about them.
Well, that's good. That would be a better thing for us to do is to keep a log and try to jot that down. But I'm thinking though, this is actually a great question for any of us because we're inevitably going to be on the other side of it at some point too, where we're meeting with somebody that's a bigger fish than us. And how do we make ourselves memorable? And we can't all just try to wear something goofy or something different or we can't like show up in a witch's costume just so they remember us. They might think we're crazy. So I'm just
I,
trying to think this through. So here's my answer to the question, like so that people don't feel like they have to wear something weird or be weird to get attention, or be so that they don't feel like they have to buy gifts or do something big for the other person. I do typically remember people who engage with me in story. It's the same thing, right? Like story. If
Yeah.
somebody tells me a story about themselves that resonates with me, I'll
Yep.
typically remember that person.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then what I think they need to do after the conference. Now, before you get to see the rest of my conversation with Larry, we're going to take a moment to hear from our sponsors, me, the Storyteller's Mission. And I want to remind you that if you are actually interested in becoming the best possible writer you can become, then we have a course that is currently available for you. It's called Hollywood Story Structure Made Easy. It's everything you need to know about story structure. Now, Larry refers to himself as a pantser, but he also said that he writes a treatment, or he writes some sort of outline that helps him at least know where he's going in the story, and then he sees where the characters want to take it. Well, that's called fleshing out your story. There are certain markers you have to hit. To that end, I have created a video on the 7 deadly plot points. These are the 7 things, the 7 markers you have to hit in your story in order to have a good story. Just click on the link provided and you can watch the free training, and then you can learn more about my bigger course on the subject, Hollywood Story Structure Made Easy. I look forward to seeing you there. Okay, back to the show. What I think they need to do after the conference, it's appropriate then to follow up with them by email and say, hey, I'm the gal that you sat with at dinner and we got into that conversation about Indian rituals in the South. And I told you the story about my grandfather who bought land from the Native Americans in South Dakota and then had the tribe come after him to try to get it back. Like literally reminding me of the details of our interaction, jarring that will be really helpful.
Yeah. I mean, it's just some of them get it when you tell them that, some of them don't, because I told pretty much everyone, when you send me an email, you remind me of what we talked about. And they all would see my sheet. I said, you see this sheet. I won't remember everyone unless you jog my memory. Well, some people will send a small paragraph, couple sentences. One guy wrote like a full synopsis.
You
It
don't
was
want
like
that either.
it was 1,000 words. But that is a very good question that you asked. How can they separate themselves from the pack? Because that's part of what they need to do anyway with their message. So I think it comes down to personality.
Yeah, it does. And yet there are specific things that you can craft and cultivate.
Yeah.
But personality is a big part of it. And then being yourself, but then reminding the person of the self that you are. So you don't want to
Yeah.
perform and try to be something you're not just so you stand out.
Yeah. Or, that and, a connection. One of the people that I had a Zoom call with this week, she lives in Pittsburgh. I was raised in the area. So immediately we spent 10 minutes talking about Pittsburgh.
Hmm. But, these are things that I've been thinking about. The real question is, how do you get yourself noticed in this sea of other people? And it can't be a gimmick.
No.
All right. I'm thinking through this as we're talking. Like, we're solving the problem as we're thinking about it. But when I go to a conference, there's all those people, they all want to talk to me. You can't be weird to stand out because now I just think you're crazy and I want to avoid you. So it triggers the fear center of my brain if you're too weird. You also don't want to fake it and be something you're not, because really it is about your essence. That's actually your brand, is who
Yeah.
you actually are. So you have to lean into that. But you also can't be limited by who you are. Meaning, if you're a shy person, you have to actually take action to overcome that, to
Yeah.
make yourself known in some way. Not that you suddenly become the most outgoing person at the party, but rather that you don't let the shyness or the fear of it hold you back, and you go up to the person you want to talk to and you introduce yourself. But I also think along with that, something that is helpful to me, and I'm sure to everybody, if they know something about you. Like, there's nothing that drives me more bonkers. Well, that's not true. I'm speaking in hyperbole. There's lots of things that drive me bonkers. But one of the things that drive me bonkers is when somebody comes up to me saying, oh, I want to talk to you about what, this or that or this or that. But it turns out they've never listened to a podcast episode. They don't know what I'm about. They don't know what kind of work I'm even interested in. They don't know anything about me. So then I feel like they're just using me, or they're just being lazy. And that actually makes them stand out in a negative way.
Yep.
But someone who comes up to me and says, hey, I listened to such and such podcast episode, and it really spoke to me. And it can be specific, it really spoke to me in this particular area. And that's why I wanted to come and talk to you, because you really drilled home this thing about visual images. And I think maybe I'm lacking in that, but I feel like I've got a really great story. Could I pitch that to you? And maybe we could brainstorm some ideas on how I could make it more visual. Now, all of a sudden, I am predisposed to want to help them because they've told me my material resonates with them. They're coming at me asking for my insight and wisdom, and who doesn't feel flattered by that?
Yep.
And they're also not saying, they're not trying to sell themselves to me, even if they're saying, well, would it be possible for you? Would you mind taking a minute to just read this and giving me feedback? Thank you for listening to The Storyteller's Mission with Zena Lowe. May you go forth inspired to change the world for the better through story.